Let's go to power question number 2 now. The origin of life. How did life start? Well, there's 2 possibilities. There's always more than one possibility. Wouldn't it be nice if there was just one possibility to go through? But there's 2 possibilities. One, life arose by naturalistic processes over millions and billions of years, or life was created. Only 2 choices. Oh, wait a minute, Mike, you forgot one. We came from outer space. Does that answer the question how life originated? No, it doesn't. Just pushes the answer out there. Have a whole talk on that too. Aliens, how much evidence, real evidence, do we have there's any life outside this earth? 0. Absolutely 0. So let's start here. 2 possibilities. The evolution model teaches over millions of years in some primordial soup, molecules bonded together to make the first living cell. In other words, the formula is time plus chance equals life. Does that make you feel pretty good about yourself? The Bible says something very different from this. Colossians 1:16. For by him were all things created, that are in heaven and that are in earth, visible and invisible. Whether they be thrones or dominions or principalities or powers, all things were created by him and for him. That's a pretty astounding verse in the Bible right there, isn't it? It clearly states God created all things, whether we can see them or whether we can't see them. He created all things. Now, before we get into this, we're going to need to understand some terms. What I'm going to do here is a little review of some biology terms. Why do I do this? Because when I look out there and look at all of you, it looks like some of you may have been out of the biology classroom for a year or 2. So we need to do a little review here. Just a few terms. So we're all on the same starting point here. Atoms, what are they? They're our basic unit of matter. We've heard of atoms before. Basic unit of matter. Now, what do atoms do? Well, they will bond together to make things called molecules, such as water, H2O. We've heard of water. See, this is pretty easy review. How many remember these? Yeah, it's pretty easy. What do molecules do? Well, sometimes molecules can bond together to make amino acids. Now, they are very important in this part of the talk. Why? Because they're like the building blocks of life. If we can't get amino acids, we can't get life. So very important here. And the final part is amino acids will bond together to make proteins. So there's our biology review. That's all we need to understand this section. So biology is going to be real easy here today. Now this picture you see here is still in just about every biology textbook. It is called the Miller experiment. In the 1950s, Miller set out to create the building blocks of life in a laboratory. Now notice, his objective was not to create life, but to get the building blocks, amino acids. So he built this spark chamber in his laboratory. And in this laboratory, he tried to simulate the Earth's atmosphere, what he thought it was like these alleged billions of years ago. So he put gases in there such as methane and ammonia, and then left oxygen out. Then he generated electrical sparks into the experiment to have the molecules to start reacting so he could get amino acids. And then it goes on to state that Miller did get amino acids. And that is a fact, folks. Miller did get amino acids. So why do we need a creator God then when we can do it ourselves? Wow. That's really what they're teaching in the schools. It's exactly what they're teaching in the schools. If we can do it ourselves, we don't need God. But to coin somebody's terms and phrases, how about we look at the rest of the story? Those parts that have been deliberately censored out of our textbooks to protect evolution. Critical thinking. Are we allowed to do that? Some states we can, some we can't. I just want to look at 2 things about the Miller experiment. Number 1, why did Miller use the gases he did? How did he know what the atmosphere was like these alleged billions of years ago? Secondly, what type of amino acids did Miller get? The textbooks really don't tell us this. So we're going to examine the experiment here. Miller left oxygen out of the experiment. Why did he do that? Well, Miller was a very smart man. He knew, as we know today, that in the presence of oxygen, life cannot get started. Why? Because at the molecular level, oxygen destroys the chemical bonds. So he had to leave oxygen out, even though the only trend in all the literature we have suggests this planet has always had oxygen. Far more oxygen in the early atmosphere than anyone imagined. So our textbook authors are just ignoring the scientific evidence to protect evolutionism. So what we will do is play the little game here. Let's suppose the early atmosphere had no oxygen in it. So we take all the oxygen out of the atmosphere. If we take all the oxygen away, we also take something very important away called the ozone. And you know what happens if we take the ozone away, which is made out of oxygen? We all become instant crispy critters. Because with no ozone out there, folks, the ultraviolet rays of that sun will come down and fry all molecules in any life. What we know, based on observable and repeatable science, is that life cannot start in the presence of oxygen, and it cannot start without oxygen. This is looking pretty good, isn't it? But wait, there's another story. Life didn't start on the land. We crawled up out of the oceans. Life started way down deep in the oceans where the ultraviolet rays could not penetrate. That's how it happened. I really love it when they say life started in water. I think that's a neat idea. All you have to do is go to a dictionary, open up to a page that talks about hydrolysis. Hydro means water. Hydrolysis literally means water splitting. You know what water does at the molecular level? Destroys the chemical bonds. As soon as any amino acids may have formed in the oceans, within a matter of weeks, they would have all been destroyed. Matter of fact, water is one of the worst places in the entire universe for life to begin. Can't happen. So life can't start on land, can't start in the water. There's not many places left, are there? This is looking better and better. Starting to look like Romans 1:19 and 20. God has given us all the evidence, and no one has an excuse. But we do have to look at this. Miller did get amino acids. That is a fact. But let's take a look at this. Let's examine these amino acids, because the textbook authors aren't doing that, and these educators aren't doing that. Now, amino acids come in two shapes. Just like we have a left hand and a right hand. My left and right hand are about the same, aren't they? 4 fingers and a thumb. But are they really the same? Not quite. Look what happens when I put one hand behind the other. Notice my thumb and fingers are on the opposite side. So they're not quite the same, are they? Your left and right hand are what we call mirror images of each other. Now, these amino acids come in the same type of shapes. Guess what we call them? Left-handed amino acids and right-handed amino acids. Doesn't that make it easy? Well, we do have other technical terms, but predominantly what you're going to see is left and right-handed amino acids. What's the difference between them? Well, just like our hands, they're made up of the same components, same atoms. And also like our hands, they are mirror images of each other also. Well, why is that so important here? Well, that becomes important for this reason. You see, every single amino acid in every protein in your body, and you have trillions and trillions of these, is left-handed. You do not have a single right-handed amino acid in any protein in your body. Matter of fact, every amino acid in every protein in all life is 100% left-handed. Now, what's so important about that? Well, let's go back to the Miller experiment. What did Miller really end up with? He ended up with an even mixture of 50% left-handed and 50% right-handed. And folks, that is not life. That is like a poison to life. That is about as far away from life as you can possibly get. The whole thing was a failure, and they don't even mention that in the textbooks. Every experiment we have ever done has always ended up with an even mixture of 50% left-handed and 50% right-handed. Life requires 100% left-handed in the proteins. Even when we start with all left-handed amino acids in a lab experiment, they will naturally start reverting back to a mixture in left and right-handedness. The natural tendency is always away from life, never towards it. This is looking really good. And it gets better, gets better. We're made up of 100% left-handed amino acids. And when we die and we become as dead as we can be, which will be pretty dead, do you know what happens to our 100% left-handed amino acids? They start reverting back to a mixture of left and right-handedness. What did Miller really simulate? Death, a poison to life. That is the best man can do. We can't even produce a single protein, let alone all the other parts of a cell. So the question I have is, why do they continue to put known wrong information in textbooks? Now I'm going to answer that. Now in order to answer that, I'm going to do an illustration. And also in order to answer that, I will need to exercise, this is going to be scary to some of you, my spiritual gift here tonight. Ooh, that always gets pastors a little. Okay, now, what is my spiritual gift? It's a unique one. My spiritual gift happens to be creating anxiety in other people. So I'm going to exercise that here tonight.
I thought your spiritual gift was doing push-ups.
Watching other people do push-ups. That's a good one too. Now, how am I going to do this? I'm now going to give you a math problem. How many does that scare right away? Yeah, I'm going to give you a math problem, and you all must have an answer. Why? Because I'm going to call on you tonight for the answer. And I'm going to call on you even if you aren't looking at me. Notice I slow down when I do this because I really enjoy this. So let me give you the math problem. And before you try and answer, let me qualify with the kind of answers you can give. So here is your math problem. How much is 3 plus 1, and you cannot use the number 4 because I do not like the way it looks. It's a little bit too religious for me. Now, I want your answer as an exact number. I will not even accept 3.999 repeating. No Roman numerals, no fingers. Keep your shoes on, don't want to see your toes. I don't want it spelled out. If you're multilingual, I want your answer in English. I don't want any formulas like 10 minus 6 or 2 squared. And if you're a computer person, I want your answer in base 10. Now, if you do give me one of these wrong religious answers, you will be doing push-ups. So does anybody have an answer to 3 plus 1 before I just start calling on you?
He married his sister.
Okay. Okay. That will be a legitimate answer there. Very good. I did hear a religious answer, and that is at least 20 push-ups. Somebody said 4. You won't have to own up for it. But I'm going to start calling on you now. And I'd like to do this the military way. You know how we do this the military way? Yes. You move. Thank you for volunteering right there, because if you move, you volunteered. Now, you were going to say 7, weren't you? No, go ahead and say 7. Say 7. 7 is the correct. Okay, I'll accept. 7 is the correct answer. See, I knew you knew math. 7 is the correct answer. I'm just looking. Oh, thank you for moving there. And you were going to say 6, weren't you? Yes, exactly right. So I knew you knew math. Very good. Oh, thank you for volunteering there. You were going to say 13, weren't you? Exactly right. Now, wait a minute. How can all these different answers like 7 and 6 and 13 be correct to a simple problem like 3 plus 1? Here's your solution. See, if you rule the answer out, if you cannot accept the truth, you must accept anything in its place. And folks, that is what evolution is. They've ruled out the truth of a creator God and must put anything in its place, even to the point of teaching our students 3 plus 1 can equal 7. Because that's the kind of teaching they're doing when they teach the Miller experiment succeeded, when it is known to have failed. What we have recognized over all these years is that our students are coming out of these schools repeating the same mistakes over and over again because we're unwilling today to teach true science anymore. We've got to get back to teaching true science. It will always point to a creator God. Hubert Yockey, PhD in physics. world-class evolutionist, wrote a book called Information Theory, Evolution, and the Origin of Life. And here's what he states. A great deal of effort has been expended in finding theories for the origin of life without success. John Joe McFadden, evolution professor of molecular biology, wrote a book called Quantum Evolution. How many have read that one? Boy, no dinner table discussions? The simplest living cell could not have arisen by chance. Here he is, an evolutionist, and he makes this statement. This, folks, is called a willful rejection. Franklin M. Harrell, professor of biochemistry, Colorado State University, also an evolutionist. The origin of life is also a stubborn problem with no solution in sight. And we go on and on and on. We haven't even been able to get a single protein yet. And folks, cells have thousands of these in there. We haven't even discussed the RNA, the DNA, and all the other parts. They can't even get a protein. This is the end of evolution right there. It should be. Don Johnson, PhD in chemistry, PhD in computer and information science. One of these people has 2 PhDs. Now, this man is a creationist. I just want to show you something. This man is a creationist. 2 PhDs out there. Makes this statement. Since there is no known scientific procedure to generate life in the laboratory, let alone by some unknown prebiotic mechanism, one could assume the probability of life from purely physical causes is 0. If you can't get the first cell, folks, Darwinian evolution doesn't have a chance, does it? Right here is the showstopper for all of evolution, all Darwinian evolution. Wouldn't it be nice if our students could use this in the classroom? They can. We just have to teach it to them. Origin of life. If scientists are unable to explain the origin of life through naturalistic means, then without a foundation. Why should I accept evolution when you cannot produce the evidence? I already have faith. Tell me about your faith, and I'll tell you about mine. And oh, by the way, tell me what your faith in evolution has to offer me, and I'll tell you what my faith in Jesus Christ has to offer you. We're back to the gospel again. Therefore, it is logical and reasonable to believe that God, not unknown events, created all life. See, we do have a reasonable and logical faith. We have answers. We know who created, what was created, how it was created, when it was created, and how long it took to create. We have a rock-solid foundation. So far, 2 power questions. Where did the universe come from? They do not have a real answer. How did life originate? They cannot answer that one. Well, let's go to power question number 3, the fossil record. Oh, Mike, we don't have enough time to do the fossil record. There's books this thick on fossils. Can I show you how to do the fossil record in about 5 to 6 minutes?